Hello everyone, my name is Alex and welcome to this channel's first movie review and discussion for the recently released in theaters Avengers Infinity War. We love all things pop culture related, so I decided to start up a new playlist dedicated for movie and show reviews. As a youth growing up in the 80s and 90s, I would like to share my perspective as a kid who grew up trading and collecting comics, toys, and cards with all my neighborhood friends. So heads up, this is a warning. This is an absolute spoiler review, so you are fairly warned. In this review, I wanted to compare some things from the comic and the current movie. The Infinity Gauntlet was one of my favorite saga series, and it was all the rage back in the day for comic enthusiasts. Along with the Infinity series, I also enjoyed Secret Wars 1 and 2, which I would like to review and discuss sometime in the future, as it contains two of my favorite characters, Molecule Man and the Beyonder, which are highly underrated. Crossovers were also a big deal, like this collaboration with DC and Marvel. Here you can see that it contains some of the lore behind Vision and Scarlet Witch's relationship and family. It was also cool to see all the things like Superman wielding Thor's hammer and Captain America's shield, which were definitely captivating covers, enticing young people to fork over their allowance or lunch money just to own and read what was thought to be an impossibly imaginative scenario. So, if you're just getting into the explosively popular Marvel Cinematic Universe or MCU and you are interested in collecting some of the original lore to learn all about the various Marvel reference characters, weapons, and locations, then might I recommend starting with the Marvel Universe handbooks. Relating to this movie, issue number 14, also referenced as Book of the Dead and Inactive 2, was a great source to learn a bit about Thanos and also Adam Warlock, who was mentioned in after the credits of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Referring back to this issue, Thanos, who first appeared in Iron Man number 55 in 1973, was born on Titan, a moon of Saturn. By occupation, he is a conqueror and obsessive worshiper of death, but not just the concept, but rather the actual embodiment of the entity known as death, but in the comic world is genderized as a female. He's also known as a mutant Titanian Eternal and the strongest of them. I love how these source materials also gives you his specifics, like his height being 6'7", weighing in 985 pounds, with purple-gray thick hide-like skin and red eyes. Aside from his extreme physical strength, he also has high resilience to both magic and physical attacks. The deadliest attribute according to this source material though is his intelligence, which ultimately rationalizes and motivates him to annihilate life. Although he's not in the movie, Adam Warlock is also referred to as him, plays the main role as one of the cosmically powerful Avengers who fought against and eventually triumphs over Thanos and repossesses the Gauntlet, possessing the power of all the Infinity Gems, which were later referred to as stones. Warlock's comic book background states he is a perfected genetic creation of 4 scientists who call themselves the Enclave. The intent was to make an army of perfected human life forms to conquer the world, but a miscalculation in Warlock's strength allowed him to break free, obtain cosmic powers, and eventually left Earth seeking his destiny beyond space. He was also the possessor of the Soul Gem, which allowed him to visit the Soul World, as you've seen Thanos visit and see Gamora as a child in the MCU. There's a lot of additional information about the background of these two characters, including Thanos' family, Warlock's battle against the Universal Church, and other events and major characters they cross. But I'll let you check that out with other reviews, as I'm sure they get into that in a little bit more detail. So let's go ahead and check back with the comic and compare it to the movie story. I was fortunate enough to inherit a few of the original comics from back in the day, but the one I read was the omnibus variant, as it contained all the comics from this particular saga. You can pick one up at the local Barnes & Noble for about $15 to $16, plus shipping and handling, tax, or check out your local comic dealer, which you can pick up on average for about 25 bucks. That is what I paid for mine, minus a promotional discount at the local shop some time ago. Introduced to the saga, but not a stranger to the Marvel Universe, we get our first look at Mephisto, a hell demon pretty much who we as kids referred to as Satan back in the day, who was basically subservient to Thanos, who had just recently obtained all the Infinity Stones and is now a god. This was impactful in the comic series as it implied that even the devil, who by biblical proportions is the ultimate sum of evil to all mankind, is pretty much a lapdog to Thanos as he fears Thanos. With the completed Infinity Gauntlet, is now in absolute control of all existence. The movie character comparison I related to this was Ebony Maw. Even though they are two different characters, it is a nice welcome to see a transition connection between the comic and movie, as both characters expressed worship of Thanos and are in awe of his power. Having already possessed even one Infinity Stone in the movie, but quickly gaining the second stone from the Tesseract Loki failed to hide, which eventually led to his death at the hands of Thanos after an attack on a refugee ship which contained the last survivors of Asgard. It was interesting to see the MCU's version of the origin of the Infinity Stones, which was created in the Big Bang. It is unimaginable that even a single stone could even be found, which Thanos did, find the first Power Stone and even possessed a second one, which was nearly impossible. So hence how you can only imagine how impressed these followers are of Thanos. In the movie, we witness a Hulk versus Thanos battle to which Thanos exhibited impressive fluid fighting skills, not just some bashing, but he actually had some MMA going on. Easily, he was able to take over the Hulk toe-to-toe, even beats Thor. Heimdall quickly teleports Hulk to Earth, which costed him his life, again at the hands of Thanos. In the comics, Thanos spends more of the introductory time expressing his obsession with death, who is personified as a woman, and he has even interests of both romantic and worship of death, and is pretty much Thanos' goal is to win her affection over. Now, just to get a little bit of background on that, remember there were some previous comics. For those of you who are the comic enthusiasts, Death did resurrect Thanos at some point. There was some implication that she was actually trying to do this to gain more additional power, but it kind of backfired on her as Thanos has his own goals and doesn't quite 100% align with Death's. So going back again, even he tries to impress her by resurrecting his own granddaughter Nebula, who he reforms into a twisted, charred flesh being. Moving along, the story later cuts to Doctor Strange and Wong. This is true in both comic and movie. I even liked how Strange's cloak presents its own personification. In the movie, they are interrupted by a teleported Bruce Banner. In the comic, it's Silver Surfer who is the bearer of the bad news and tells them about Thanos. This is one of my main personal gripes, as Silver Surfer is one of my all-time favorite heroes. Well, heroes I use loosely because he was a servant at one point of Galactus. Anyways, along with the characters of Molecule and Beyonder, those are my top favorite characters. I would have loved to have seen Silver Surfer in the movie, but maybe, lack of hype from the Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, maybe that's what attributed to his replacement. Maybe there was some contract, legal, ownership of characters, who knows. But either way, in the comic, he warns Doctor Strange. We're talking about Silver Surfer here in the comic books. And then in the movie, Bruce Banner explains the issue. Falling back on the comics, when we learn more that the cause for Thanos' affection for Death is that he had been brought back to life since he died at some point in the comic book series, and through him, Death hopes to restore balance since she realized there were more people alive today than had died, which is really awesome, because that kind of ties into Thanos' ultimate explanation. When he expresses that to Gamora in the movie about the balance when he handed her a double-bladed knife after destroying her people in Homeworld. It was kind of nice to see that there was a connection between those two stories. They wanted to both see balance. In the comics, Thanos is explaining to Mephisto just how powerful he is, eventually snapping his fingers to obliterate a majority of all beings in existence across the universe. This is where the MCU movie ends, and where a lot of you probably started to feel unsettled and like, what the heck is going on? So just so that you feel a little bit at ease, just remember, this is kind of where the comic book actually begins. With the remaining survivors having the burden to undo what was done. In the comic books, Spider-Man survives this. So many theories and interpretations about the significance of this type of impactful death are posted. I'm sure you can probably search for it online. This is my contribution, kind of like my thoughts about it, just to kind of weigh in on the gravity of what really all happened, not only in the comics, but also in the movie. From a spiritual religious standpoint, just think death is just a phase, right? Even from a scientific understanding where our body's energy dissipates, whether the soul or conscious collective still exists, or even if our carbon-based bodies return to the earth and become part of the big cycle again, in some way, shape, or form, we do pass on and are still part of the world. The fear felt by Peter Parker in the movie as he started to disappear made it apparent that the powers wielded by Thanos doesn't just kill you, you actually no longer exist. Soul, energy, body, components, not even from a deterioration standpoint, recycling yourself back into the earth, none of that. You just completely get, wiped out. So from the religious standpoint, this is considered a spiritual death where you not even have your soul completely dies, right? Or your energy or even your carbon cells, like I said before, don't exist anymore since basically Thanos just wiped that out. And that's the heavy explanation that I can put in, the fear that was put in, that this is not just dying and then passing and believing whatever you believe. This is like Thanos just made you disappear. You no longer exist. And the fear is you losing everything after this type of death. So how it makes, more than the standard story, we got to save the planet or the people plot. This is kind of like, wow, we've got to really fight for just to exist. This would be the premium of heavy stakes worth fighting for. Even Doctor Doom makes his appearance as he fathoms the great disaster and tries to take the power for his own, of course. He eventually appears at Doctor Strange's place and has a brief battle confrontation with Strange, Wong, and Silver Surfer, and is eventually intervened by Adam Warlock and Pip the Troll. After Thanos methodically eliminates certain people, including his father, and forcefully captures his brother Eros, also known as Star Fox, and no, not the one from the Super Nintendo game, via a summon, Captain America assembles what heroes he could and debriefs on the known disappearances of certain other heroes, including the Fantastic Four, members of the X-Factor and X-Men, and most notably Wasp, Hawkeye, and Black Panther, who we've seen in previous movies as well, of course, and in the current, and Black Panther, of course, in the current movie. It's notable among the assembled heroes in the comic version. I wanted to make a point here. The original Thor's mind and powers are sealed in actually a different person by the name of Eric Matterson. So if you haven't been following the comic versions, at some point Thor gets banished and but yet seals his power in this person. I'm not going to get into the whole origin story of Eric Matterson, but in essence, just think this is Thor. But in deep reality in the comic series, he was actually a different person who was mortally wounded and saved by Odin. Hence the reference in this comic storyline explanation. But for all intensive purposes, this is Thor and in the movie. And Thor remains, his original self in the MCU version. I don't want to over confuse, and I'm sorry if I did, but just wanted to point that out, that Eric Matterson is actually Thor. Thor's powers, Thor's mind, everything else just trapped in or put into this body. There's probably a better explanation out there. If you all want to comment on that, please do so down below. But anyways, going back to the story. So we are treated to see some of our favorite characters, such as Wolverine, who doesn't make a physical appearance in the movie unless I miss some sort of Easter egg, and Iron Man, who is surveying the cosmos. We are given a peek at the destruction of Asgard, unlike the MCU's version, which was destroyed during Ragnarok, right? In the wake of destruction, we see alliances being made, notably Doom, who at the moment will assist in the fight against Thanos. We also continue to see the destructive aftermath of the surviving heroes trying to clean up the mess after people disappearing. We got a look at Black Widow, who makes her appearance, and Doctor Strange summoning additional heroes to join the fight. Some of the heroes are left behind to deal with the mess back on Earth, such as another one of my favorites and underrated characters, Moon Knight. Not truly emphasized yet in the MCU version, the comic goes as far as including Marvel's ultimate of ultimate beings, who basically reached out by Quasar, Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock. Here you can see entities such as the Trinity, Epoch, the Watcher, Kronos, Living Tribunal, the Inbetweener, the Stranger, the embodiments of both love and hate, Lord Chaos and Master Order, Galactus, who you've seen already in the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie, which, by the way, again, I'm kind of griping and wishing we could see Silver Surfer in the movie. But anyways, you also see a couple of the Celestials, too, which were featured in Guardians of the Galaxy, notably the floating giant robot-looking head in one of the movies. You probably may have seen that or not, but it's out there on the internet. The assembly between the greatest entities and remaining heroes brings up a lot of internal conflict as well as they try to resolve and create a plan to stop Thanos and reclaim the gauntlet containing all the Infinity Gems, or stones as we know it. One of my favorite moments is seeing Wolverine and the Hulk taking a breather outside, not interested in the high debate squabbles going on. For you to really appreciate this moment, you have to understand that Wolverine was first introduced as Hulk's mortal enemy in The Incredible Hulk number 180 and 181. The two have been going at it for years, so to see that development between the two characters ally easier than the rest of them was a huge, awesome comic, relief. To me, it was pretty funny because I've always imagined the creation of Wolverine being designed originally to come in and kill Hulk, and it wasn't until he gained a lot of popularity that they decided to give him his own storyline and he became part of the X-Men, so it was kind of awesome to see that this person created to be the anti-Hulk, these two battling it out, and they've had their own comics and their own little cartoon movie, the animated movie together. So it was kind of fun to see that. Back on Thanos' cosmic platform, Death continues to mutely shun Thanos' affections and advancements, at which point he creates himself a female partner, which he names Taraxia the Terrible, to make Death jealous. This is an excellent example that demonstrates his power not only to cause massive destruction, like we've seen in the movies, but he also has the power to create in an instant, mind you at that, which reinforces more of his godhood abilities. The next sequences we see is, of course, the big battle ensuing. Thanos at this point decides to fight the heroes at minimal power, a strong demonstration of his ego and pride, of which he had been told are his character flaws. He also wanted to show off that he himself is masterful and more powerful than the other beings, even without relying so much on the stones as much. Remember in the MCU version when he fights the Hulk, it was stated, let him have his fun. As he does something similar to show off his actual strength without really using the full force of the stones, you can see that correlation between the comic and the MCU version. So I thought that was a great throwback. Another sign that demonstrated how hardcore he is and dangerously threatening, we see Doom team up with the heroes and try to take him out. In the 80s and 90s, Wolverine was definitely top ranked as a fan favorite, and many of us kids back in the day thought he was the most powerful despite the lack of cosmic powers, right? Mind you, this was just a justification because, of course, even me being guilty, and even before the internet and ranting, knowledgeable geeks like myself, try to set the record straight of who's powerful. We really rooted for Wolverine being one of those strong types. Here here Thanos turns our fan favorite into mush, and that was absolutely devastating. So it was kind of funny to see how quickly he's able to just take out Wolverine. Here we can see Thanos taking out Vision, not necessarily for an Infinity Stone like he possessed in the MCU version, but simply to destroy him. He does the same thing to Thor by crystallizing him, pretty much taking him out. Do you remember when you dissected Mantis and Drax, and he kind of pretty much chopped them up into blocks in the movie? In the comics, he does something similar, but to Nova, basically into small Rubik's Cube looking pieces. By the way, at this point, Cyclops from the X-Men is dead, and Taraxia the Terrible kills Iron Man. You can see her holding his head, and I'm implying that his physical head is not just his helmet, is still attached together somehow. I don't know, it's just really gross, but she takes him out. Drax and Firelord are teleported to the prehistoric age. At this point, Thanos shatters Thor like glass, and Quasar shows up. Thanos makes a comment that Quasar is late, basically the late Captain Marvel's replacement, and an instant turns Quasar to smolders. After many heroes were killed or banished, Adam Warlock executes a devised plan to take the gauntlet from Thanos. In the movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy were part of this plan. As you may have seen, Quill, or Star-Lord, gets emotional while Iron Man and the rest of the group tries to fight and free the gauntlet from Thanos' hand. But basically they fail as Quill breaks Thanos loose from Mantis's mental hold. In the comics, Captain America tries to face off with Thanos as the diversion, while, you know, at this story's most pivotal, cosmically important, decisive moment, Silver Surfer attempts to sweep in and take the gauntlet, only to fail at the attempt. I'll make mention at this, of this point a little bit later, because this actually falls into one of my favorite What If comic books, which is, what happened if Silver Surfer succeeded. I'll go through that a little later. But at this point, Thanos is done playing and grants himself full power of the stones and banishes the other heroes. Warlock's plan B is now in motion, where the most cosmically powerful entities, so what we mentioned before, all those really strong beings that were the ultimate of all ultimates in the Marvel's comic book universe, of course during this era, are now tasked to team up and take out Thanos. So just imagine that. I mean, this was the battle of all ultimate battles. This was the most biggest deal, especially for us kids growing up in the 80s and 90s and kind of reading and going through these comics. At this point, everyone fears how mad Thanos has become from both villain and hero side. Thanos is so powerful that even the entities are trying to destroy him with their full eternal power by blasting him or trying to smash a train line of planets on him, all of which Thanos simply just brushes off with the power of the gauntlet, of course. In the midst of the assaulting attacks from eternity of chaos and order, love and hate, Mephisto tries to take advantage and steal the gauntlet, to which Thanos retaliates, only to be intervened by Death herself, which puts him at an utter shock of betrayal. So since she was the one that essentially revived him, granting him power, and to which he tries to win her favor through wielding such awesome power. So it's just, you can imagine at this point now he's just in absolute shock, like, you know what, I did all this for you and now you betray me. In an instant, he subdues all the cosmic entities at once and renders them trapped. Eternity faces and attacks Thanos, only to lose his power as Thanos apparently destroys and becomes Eternity himself, leaving his body vulnerable. So here's another turning point. At this point, Nebula, so we're going back to remember the broken down state that she was in, reaches deep down in her core and finally seizes the gauntlet for herself. She banishes Thanos and Traxia into deep space, where Traxia dies because she no longer is sustained by Thanos' godly powers. Thanos survives and travels through Doctor Strange's portal to regroup with the heroes, who apparently have been restored during the transition of power. So just to give you a little bit of background on this piece right here at this point, understanding that Nebula is far less qualified to understand the power she wields, and fearing she will do worse than what Thanos had done, even though, to her credit, she did restore everything the way, back to the way things were. The heroes remarkably team up now with Thanos to take out Nebula. So now here's another huge twist to this plot. Surprise, surprise, she immobilizes them and entraps Thanos. The cosmic entities come back, because remember, again, she kind of wished everything back to where it was restored before, and now that means that the cosmic beings are now released once again to fight, but are again defeated by Nebula because she wields the awesome power. During this time, Warlock and Silver Surfer travel to the Soul World. A quick tidbit here, the original Soul Gem was still in Adam Warlock's power. So just the way I kind of understood it from the comic books, Thanos fashioned an artificial gem to control the other 5 gems by siphoning the real Soul Gem's power a while back in some previous issues when he was still with Adam Warlock. So you got to remember that the history that Thanos has, he wasn't always just trying to be the most evil person he was. I mean, in our perspective, he was, but there were moments where there were things that he couldn't accomplish by himself, so he had a few team-ups with Adam Warlock and other heroes before in the past. So Thanos fashions an artificial gem after siphoning basically the real Soul Gem a while back, when he was still collecting all the gems. So Warlock summons the power of the true soul gem to control the others, which damages the gauntlet on Nebula's hand, and she drops it to the ground. Warlock finally retrieves the gauntlet, restoring it back to full power. So now at this point, standing among the heroes, Thanos threatens to blow himself up and take everyone else with him as opposed to accepting defeat or having someone else in possession of the gauntlet. Thor knocks Thanos into space and they all see a massive explosion. In the end, Adam Warlock has a conversation with Silver Surfer, Thor, and Doctor Strange about their experience with power, because the heroes now worry what Adam Warlock might be like now that he finally has the Infinity Gauntlet. He promises, though, to uphold his duties of the power that he now wields and protect the universe as he has done before, but the others aren't so convinced, but really they have no say. So in the final scene, Adam travels with Pip the Troll and Gamora to an unnamed planet. They discover that Thanos feigned his death and has established a small farm and home for himself, and has essentially retreated there to rest. Warlock asks Thanos for advice on how to handle this new power, to which Thanos replies, "Endure or surrender the power." Thanos seems at peace at this point, having had the experience of learning a deeper meaning of what it is to have power, which is the main core of what he seeks. While the others basically question why Thanos shouldn't be vanquished or killed or whatever, Warlock shares that even Thanos is part of the mosaic that makes up the universe. In the final panel, you see him sitting on the steps in front of his new, small, farm home as he smiles to himself, much like you see in the end of the MCU version after he accomplishes his goal. At this point, he basically feels he got a lot stronger and got basically the better outcome or deal of the situation as he digests the experiences he had in his never-ending quest to understand the power. As an added bonus, I mentioned before about the What If comics. I absolutely love to collect when I was a lot younger, of course, and I just so happen to have some still in my possession. From what I recall, and just based off on this book, I remember that it's the Watcher who's the narrator. So remember the cosmic being, the Watcher. You've seen probably a couple of cameos of him in Thor Ragnarok, if I'm not mistaken, was one. But basically, he is the person who shares the alternate universe versions of pivotal moments during various different cosmic storylines in the Marvel universe. In this one, which is one of my favorite What If series, this is the one where Silver Surfer succeeds in taking the gauntlet from Thanos. So the point that I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to touch base on that right now. We are able to see what if Silver Surfer had taken the gauntlet. What kind of person would he have been like when he assumed that power, and what did he do with it? The whole concept again revolves around the use of power. What would people do? It's kind of the same question that we were asked when we were kids. If you could inherit anybody's superpowers, what would you, ask for? Who would you mimic, right? So this was interesting that even as supreme as Silver Surfer already was, because he was, the servant of Galactus at one point, the herald, as it were, his powers continues to influence him and other people around him for worse, or even if they had good intentions, it may cause negative effects and impact the existence. So you talk about the ripple effect, right? That even though you intend to do something good, it may have a stronger impact to others around. At the end of this series, basically, I'm just going to kind of narrate it very short. I don't want to spoil the whole thing on this one, but I guess, spoil. I'm already telling you the ending here. Silver Surfer restores what Thanos destroyed and eventually destroys the gauntlet and the gems themselves before he vanishes with his love, Shalabal. So again, very interesting storyline. I absolutely loved it. But again, it was one of those twists of what would somebody do in the case of power, and what would what would the end result be if they had the decision to do whatever they wanted to make life or existence, they saw fit to be. Reverting back to the movie, I thoroughly enjoyed the cinematic version of this epic storyline. I enjoyed how they brought back some of the memorable sequences, like they kind of did the internal crossovers, like Hulk using the Hulkbuster suit. You see Black Panther and how they brought back Wakanda as a pivotal battleground during the war to protect Vision and the Stone. We, of course, saw Captain America with a new modernized look, as well as White Wolf, who was formerly the Winter Soldier, basically Bucky. we got to see how much more powerful Doctor Strange had become since his initial movie, and basically reprised the role, essentially playing as himself, as well as the cover for Adam Warlock, in Adam Warlock's presence, because we didn't get a chance to see Adam Warlock again. Remember, just as one of the quick end credit scenes, you've seen him in a cocoon. If you didn't know what that was already, when the lady says, "I shall call him Adam," it was Adam Warlock, is what a lot of us believe him to be. This was at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Doctor Strange, reprised that role again. That he's going to be the main essential character, I guess, the all-knowing, all-seeing, the person who has the plan, whereas in the comic books it was Adam Warlock who had the plan. But either way, we clearly see that he and Iron Man will play a big part in the second Infinity War movie coming up next year. The Falcon makes a comeback along with the other characters we didn't see in the comic that were throwbacks to past movies, like we've seen him also, like the Red Skull. We got a chance to see them. We saw the Guardians of the Galaxy, of course. I also like the new Iron Spider suit, by the way. Really enjoy that, because that kind of threw back a lot of the more modern comics. It's not something that I grew up with. Spidey never had the iron suit when he was going through this. He kind of had his own original suit. But again, I liked how in this movie there were so many side missions, and all to collaborate to take down Thanos, none of which really worked as intended, or fully intended. We don't know that yet until the next movie, but this speaks to the true weakness that Thanos has, as explained in the third book in this series, the comic book I'm referring to again. That is, per Adam Warlock, Thanos has always purposely left gaps in his plot for the heroes to exploit and eventually defeat him. Rather than possess the stones right away and immediately snapping his fingers, which he could have done, he constantly leaves random chance, as he believes there is balance to all things, and in his mind, balance is the key to the order of the universe. But even he has this major respect for power that not even he feels worthy of it, or anybody else. But you see him going after power all this time, and usually people, if it was Doctor Doom, I'm sure he would have done something, which in the Secret Wars you will see. And that's a whole different, series I would love to get into later in the future. But, different villains will do different things. Thanos just so happens to be one of those people that has that, he's a bad guy, yes, but at the same time, too, he almost creates his own self-defeat, like he doesn't want to win. I know that it sounds absurd. Some of you may disagree with it, but it just seems like that in the comic books, that he's created that character flaw within himself. Only maybe he's just doing it to create lessons and grow stronger that way. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing a bit about the comparisons between the book and this movie. It wasn't really my intent to say which is better. I just wanted to share and bridge the gap between the MCU version and the comic book version. I know that it was so funny. I was in the theaters and I can see so many faces. I felt like I was the only one that actually read the comic and remember it from my childhood. So I'm glad I still kept the omnibus and I was able to go over it again and share it with you guys, because I've seen a lot of your faces and you probably all know who I'm talking about. You guys were just bummed, and it was like hilarious to me just to see all these people like, what happened? And I think for me, as a person who actually knows what happens in the comics, it was awesome. I was actually impressed, and I'm like, this isn't the end. Like, I knew there was going to be more, and we all kind of know that because we know, we're thinking more Hollywood and coming out with more movies. But just even from the story point, I knew wasn't going to end. But it was really awesome to see, because we're so used to seeing, the typical storyline, the hero again, having character flaws, overcoming them. There's a villain involved. He tries to do something, doesn't win, and hero, wins, and everybody's happy. And this concept of the MCU version, I absolutely loved it, because we finally have a movie that has built up a villain so much and so hardcore to kind of create the seriousness of who he is, that now in the upcoming movies you're going to have a greater appreciation for and understanding, and even maybe a possible fear of like, wow, this guy, how do you beat him, right? How are you able to do that? Again, the correlation is that I've already went through the weakness. Thanos essentially destroys himself. I mean, it's not a matter. I know there's a lot of theorists out there that say, oh, well, these characters have these types of powers and can easily take out Thanos. No, once Thanos has the gauntlet, it's game over. Just snap the fingers, they don't exist. That's all there is to it. What stops Thanos is himself. I mean, if he really wanted to, he could have just been the only person in existence and snap everything away. But he has weaknesses in a sense where not really weaknesses for us, weaknesses for him as a villain, where it benefits us because there will be a way to win. So I think if anything at all, it's a good breath of fresh air to think that, hey, this is a great setup for the upcoming movies. You know, to those of you again who felt really uneasy about the movie's ending, remember this isn't truly this was more truly a story about Thanos, not so much a true story of the Avengers. I know that's the pivotal, you know, we are bringing the main characters to life here and giving them the big role to stop the big bad guy. But this really was Thanos' story. And it doesn't end there. There's more that needs to continue and happen before the Infinity War is truly over. I really thought it was ingenious how the movie was planned out, as we are, you know, so accustomed to seeing, again, the typical hero win. So I am interested to see how they're going to tie in Gamora and Nebula, because remember, Nebula, I mean, she was kind of tortured in the MCU version a lot, but she was so pivotal and kind of, again, tortured, a tortured, you know, twisted, charred flesh husk in the comic book version. I'm kind of curious to see if they're going to develop and bring her back in the future movie, and she might be pivotal again, you know, with all the hatred and that she has for you know, for Thanos, but then again feeling that love for her sister Gamora. Maybe there might be some conflict with her where she may have the opportunity to get a hold of the Gauntlet in the future you know, movies. Yet to be seen. We'll see what happens, but again, I'm glad that you guys stuck around and got a chance to see this video. Thank you guys so much again for taking the time to check out this video. I would personally appreciate your support if you would like to subscribe to our channel. We are small, but we would love to grow and share more content with you in the future. We'd love to build up a community. I know there's a lot of them that are already out there and exist, but you know, I'd love to start a chain here myself with your thoughts as you know, it relates to the comic books. For those of you that grew up with the comic books, you know, kind of share your insights to it. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you all in the next video.